Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tech Guru Podcast. My name is Frick, the Tech Guru. It is Friday, May 11th, 2018. It is Mother's Day weekend, and I got some great gift ideas to give your mother in the gadget world, so stay tuned for that. What else are we going to talk about today? We're going to give you some tech news. We're going to talk about Google's latest press conference, and we are going to talk about online dating, so stay tuned for that. But first, we have to thank our sponsors this week. We are thanking Glance, Gleam, and Clean. Now, if you look at the outside of your house, it is probably filthy. And most people focus on cleaning the inside of their house, but they don't think of the outside. And when they do clean the outside of their house, they use pressure washing, which is actually not that safe. All it does is it doesn't kill the algae that's on your house. It just moves the problem around. And when you're using high pressure, you can chip your paint, damage your window seals, and even damage your siding. Glance, Gleam, and Clean focuses on soft wash. It is a mobile soft wash service, so it is environmentally friendly. It kills the algae. It lasts longer. It uses a lower pressure spray. It is actually substantially quicker, and your house looks a lot cleaner when finished. So if you need your house cleaned on the outside, please call Glance, Gleam, and Clean. Mobile soft wash, 506-227-6046. You can get 10% off if you tell them I sent you. So make sure you keep that in mind. I also want to give a shout out to my good friend Stephanie Wilkins, who recently graduated from the real estate program, and she is working with RE/MAX. So if you're looking for a real estate agent, please don't hesitate to give her a call, and the link to her profile so you can send her a message will be in the description for this episode. All right, so let's get going. As you may have noticed, if you're watching the podcast, I have a new microphone. So I decided I've made a little bit of money off this thing already, so I decided to upgrade my equipment since I plan on keeping this going, and hopefully this microphone makes me sound a little more manly. Probably not, but that's the goal. And I have a little pop filter here in front of it too as well, so that should help it sound a little better. So hopefully that works out. So just to give you an update on what I talked about last week is we had major flooding in the New Brunswick area. The flood has finally started to dissipate. It's going away, but now we're starting to see the real damage here in southern New Brunswick that the flood waters did. And again, thank you to everybody who helped out filling sandbags and preparing for the flood, and those who will volunteer over the coming weeks trying to get this stuff all cleaned up. Just to kind of give you an update of what happened with my place, I showed you last week the wall that we built, which was fantastic, but the water did not actually make it through. It just barely actually made it up to the wall, but it didn't make it through because it didn't really push against it. To be honest with you, I'm kind of a little disappointed. We were proud of our wall. It was probably the nicest one in the neighborhood, if I do say so myself, and I kind of wanted to test it. But at the same time, I'm thankful that no water got through and no water got into my house, so my house is safe. And again, thank you so much for the people helping around. My neighbors flooded, and people very close to me, so I was the lucky one, I guess. Okay, so what is going on in the news? Before I give you some gift ideas for your mother this weekend for Mother's Day, I wanted to tell you what's going on in the news. I have one article that I was focusing on, and this week Google had their big press conference. So if you're familiar with like Apple and any tech company, any big tech company, they always like to have these big elaborate press conferences so that they can reveal new stuff. And Google had theirs this week, and it's called the Google I/O. And I wanted to give you a few highlights of some stuff that's coming in the future. And one of their new services is called Google Duplex. And if you text on your phone, you're probably familiar with the feature that allows you to not autocorrect, but it's called autofill, which means when you type a word, your phone will try and predict the next word that you want to say to complete your sentences. And you may have seen on Facebook in the past where people post pictures that say, start the sentence like this, and then press the center button that the keyboard suggests in your phone and see how it completes your sentence. And everybody's is different, and it's based on your history and things like that. Google unveiled this thing called Google Duplex, and it's a new AI assistant. And what it does is not only will it complete the next word, but it will actually complete the entire sentence. And I know some people probably will think this is a little creepy, but based on, it knows your history with the person you're talking to, based on previous text messages and things like that, and it will actually. For example, I'll give you an example. So if one of your friends is sick, and the previous night you were talking to them, and they told you that they're sick and they weren't able to come out or something, and they just weren't feeling well. So the next day you want to send them a text and you want to ask them how are they feeling. So if you typed in how, Google would actually finish the sentence for you. It would, I mean, it's not always going to be correct, obviously, but it would finish the sentence. It would already know, and it would actually highlight it and show you what it wants to say, and then you could just press a button and it would automatically complete that whole sentence. It would say, how are you feeling today, or something along those lines. That's how it's going to work. One of the other big things that they released as part of this Google Duplex was Google will actually now call, if you want it, okay, so it's hard to explain, but let me give you an example. Right now, when you use Siri on your phone or you use Google Assistant, you can say, what is the phone number for, Papa John's on the west side? Or what's the best pizza place around me? Now, if you ask about a restaurant, for example, it will actually call the restaurant and make the reservation. So as of right now, what will happen is it will show you the phone number. Maybe it'll show you average wait time, things like that. But now Google has its own voice, and it can actually have a full conversation with someone on the other line. So it can book a hair appointment for you. It can book a restaurant reservation. And then what it will do when it's done is it'll actually send you a message to your phone and say, you know what, you're all set for your hair appointment at 2 or your restaurant reservation at 7. They did an example of this. How well it's going to work when it actually comes out, we'll find out. And of course, it probably depends on the area as well. But really, really cool technology, and I'm really looking forward to this coming out. It looks really neat and just makes everything a little more convenient for the user. So keep an eye on that. It's called Google Duplex, and I'm sure Apple will come out with something similar along those lines. Okay, so I wanted to, being Mother's Day this weekend, shout out to all the mothers out there, and shout out to all the women, basically. I believe that all women have a motherly role to somebody, whether or not they actually have their own children. I know many women in my life who are a role model, or someone looks up to them, a child. So you play a motherly role in their lives. So happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. And I've been blessed with great mothers in my life. Of course, my own mother, my wife, who was an amazing mother to our 3, soon-to-be 4 children, and my mother-in-law as well, because she is the mother of 10 children. And I know that sounds crazy, but she's had 10 of her own children, and a great motherly example as well. So thank you to those mothers in my life. And so as a kind of a special thing I wanted to do, I wanted to kind of give an outline of the top 5 gadget gifts for mothers this year. And this was actually taken from a survey. This was in Fortune magazine, and they highlighted the 5 top things that mothers wanted in regards to technology and gadgets. And I will warn you in advance, they are pricey. So the first thing, number 5, is headphones. So if your mom is looking for new headphones, the Apple AirPods were at the top of the list. Also, the Beats, which are always popular headphones. The new Beats Studio 3 were voted by mothers. They voted on that as a gift they would like to have. Number 4 were tablets. Of course, the iPad and iPad Pro came in at number 1, as well as the iPad Mini. Number 3 was wearable technology. So this is anything from the Apple Watch or an Android Wear watch, but the one that came in on top is the health trackers, specifically the Fitbit. So a Fitbit is always a good gift for a mom. Great gift idea. Number 2 were notebooks, so laptops. The MacBook came in at number 1 as well as Dell, HP, Lenovo, and others as far as notebooks and laptops. And if you really want to spoil your mother, get her a new smartphone. The number 1 suggestion here would either be the Samsung Galaxy S9 or the iPhone 8 or 8 Plus. So if you really want to spoil your mother, get her a new smartphone this year, and she'll love you forever if she doesn't already. So those were some top gifts as voted by mothers in the Fortune magazine. So I'm sure there's a whole bunch. And if you're too poor to buy your mother any of those things, I'm sure she'll be happy with flowers, because that's what I'm going to get my mother. Spoiler. All right, let's move on, shall we? So this week, or last week actually, when I was talking about the news, one of the articles I covered was that Facebook is now getting into the dating game. And they're taking on Match.com, they're taking on eHarmony, and they're taking on Tinder and all those services that are like that. And when they announced that, they said that Match's stock actually fell by 15% immediately. So they already know that Facebook is going to be a huge player in this. And the thing that kind of bugs me about Facebook is they do copy a lot of things. And if you watch the movie The Social Network, that was the big thing around it, right? Mark Zuckerberg actually copied many things from another service, and then his service ended up being more popular. And since Facebook has been around, you can actually see different things that they've copied and made their own. Things like what Instagram did with stories. I had a list of them, but I can't remember them now. But they did have quite a few things that they didn't have at the beginning, and other services had them, and then they kind of adopted them into the Facebook algorithm. And that's what they're doing with this dating service. They realize that these dating websites are big money, and they want to take advantage of it. The online dating industry last year was a $1.4 billion industry. So there definitely is a lot of money to be had there, and Facebook wants a piece of it. So anyway, along with that, someone had asked me, is Facebook dating going to be safe? And I thought about that for a while, and I said, you know what, I'm going to do my research in regards to Facebook or online dating in general, and then get back to Wendy, who asked the question. Now, I'm going to tell you straight up, right before I get into this, I know nothing about online dating. As much as I would tell my wife, and I like to refer myself as the love guru, I am anything but the love guru. I am simply the tech guru. So I know nothing about online dating. My wife and I have been married for almost 11 years. So online dating obviously wasn't as big back then as it was now, and my wife and I grew up together. So we dated when I was 21, she was 19, and then we got married about 7 months later in August of 2007. So I've never tried online dating. I've simply done some research over the past week in regards to it, so I just wanted to share what I found. And you know what? You can hopefully make a decision from there whether you think it's for you. And I'm also going to read what some of you guys had to say as well. But before I get into that, I want to tell you the first time I ever heard of online dating. And I was 13 years old, and this lady who went to church with me, actually, her name was Allison, and I heard she was getting married. And I didn't know the guy at the time because, he wasn't from here. And I heard that they had met on the internet. And at the time, it was just such a foreign concept to me. This would have been back in 1998, 1999. And I had never heard up until that point anybody who met online and dated anybody that they had met online. And so this is what I heard when I was 13, that this lady Allison was going to marry this guy named Rick that she had met on the internet. And I'm sorry in advance for saying this, Rick and Allison, but at the time, as a 13-year-old kid, I said, there's absolutely no way that this is going to work. How do two people meet, or how do two people come together that met on the internet and end up getting married, and it actually worked? I thought to myself, there's absolutely no way that this is going to work. But fast forward to 2018, Rick and Allison are still together. They got married on July 28th, 1999. And they're two really great people, and I'm glad she married Rick, because Rick's a really cool guy, and I've learned a lot from him over the years as well. So congratulations to Rick and Allison for being the longest married couple that met online that I know of. And I've heard some other stories as well. A friend, Tammy Lanigan, met her significant other, or who would be her significant other, in 1999 on an online dating website as well, and they are also still married. So just to kind of give you a brief history, online dating has been around since 1995. The first online dating service, which was www.match.com, was created in 1995, and then just 7 years later, they had already 26.6 million people registered. And obviously, as you know, Match.com is still around. Now, before I get into what you guys said, just give me a minute here. I had some stats here. Let me just see if I can find them. Okay, so 36% of Canadians use online dating between the ages of 18 and 34. Fact number 2, the online dating scene in Canada is growing, and it has grown by $6 million since 2010. More men use online dating than women. About 52.4% of the people on online dating are men, and 47.6% are women. Age can impact finding a match. So for women, online dating statistics show that a woman's desirability online peaks at 21, but at 26, women have more online pursuers than men, whereas at 48, men have twice as many online pursuers as women. So that's an interesting fact. Number 5, 50, now this is the one you have to be careful of. 53% of people lie on their online dating profile. The top 3 things that they lie about are their age, their height or weight, and their job/income. So keep that in mind, that over half of the people that you are talking to via online dating are lying about one of those 3 things, or possibly lying about all of them. Number 6, 22% of online daters ask their friends to help create their profile. Number 7, location and sports teams are the most common words on dating profiles. Number 8, female users aren't just looking for hookups. No duh. And it says only 33% of women who use online dating websites say that they sleep with the person they're dating on the first encounter. And 60% of female Tinder users say they're looking for a match, not just a hookup. Number 9, 20% of current committed relationships began online. That's interesting. 20% of all current committed relationships began online. And number 10, common interests and looks are the most important factors. So not much has changed there in regards to online dating. That's kind of been the way it's always been with dating, that common interests and looks are the most important factors. So those are some facts that I wanted to share. There were some other ones that I had. They don't seem to be coming up for me right now, but the one that was the most telling to me was that in the last 10 years, over 50% of American marriages end in divorce. So the average length of a marriage nowadays in the United States is anywhere between 4 and 7 years. And 50% of all marriages that have happened in the last, I forget what it said, but in the last 10 years anyway, 50% of them end in divorce. Now, this is the big thing. It said that out of all the relationships that started online, only 4% of them ended in divorce. And I thought that was crazy. I didn't really believe it at first, but actually a couple sites had mentioned it, that if you meet your significant other online, it's actually much less likely, and obviously, and if you get married, it's much less likely that your marriage will end in divorce. Now, I know that online dating hasn't been around long enough to really get proper data on this, comparing it to, regular meeting somebody outside of online dating. But as of right now, it looks like it's much better to meet your significant other online. And I mean, that could be because when you fill out a profile online, you put all your interests, and the rest of it, the dating website actually matches you up based on that. And something I find as well is it is much easier to talk to somebody online than it is in person. And if you've ever heard the term keyboard warrior, that is someone who basically couldn't harm a fly in real life, but when they're on the internet, they have no problem calling people out and saying, terrible things to them, mean things to them, and of course they wouldn't do it in person. And I think that on the opposite end kind of trickles into dating as well. It's much harder to approach somebody at a bar than it is to send them a message over the internet, and that's pretty common sense. So I think that has something to do with it as well. So what did you guys have to say about online dating? As I had mentioned, I know nothing about this. So I sent out a message on my Facebook profile that said, what are your experiences with online dating services like Match, eHarmony, Tinder? Have you or do you use them? Do you find they work for you? What are your thoughts? Would love to share some on my podcast this week. So here are some comments that I got. David Ripley Ross says he doesn't use them, in case I was wondering. I wasn't really wondering. I kind of figured that he wasn't. He's been married for a long time as well. Joseph said that Jennifer and I met on Plenty of Fish, which is another popular dating website. Interesting enough, she didn't actually reply to my first message. It wasn't until about a month later I messaged her again, and she responded. We chatted for about 5 days. I asked her for her number so I could call her and talk. We talked all night till 5 or so in the morning. I slept a couple hours, and the next morning I called her, and she asked her out on an impromptu date. We went to Fredericton to smoke poutineery, and the rest is history. And Joseph and Jen, Joseph is a coworker of mine. Joseph and Jen got married, I believe, last year. So congratulations to them. Amanda says, if you're going to online date, you need a process. My process was set rigid settings on age, etc., then email back on forth, but not for too long, no wasting time. Instantly add as a friend on Facebook to creep mutual friends and ensure said person is not a creep or catfisher. And catfisher is obviously someone who lures people in through a fake profile that we talked about earlier. They lie on their profile to lure you in, basically, like a catfish. If all was clear, then a first date, casual, quick coffee. You don't know a person until you meet them in person and see how they interact with you and society in general. People portray themselves differently online, but we all present always slighter better online than we do in person. Very good point there, Amanda. She would also like to add that she had never paid for eHarmony, etc., although I was tempted because my rationale was if they are willing to pay for the service, they must really want to settle down. That's also a good point. So thank you, Amanda. Nicholas has used Tinder apparently, so we shouldn't tell his grandmother. Sorry to Nicholas's grandmother if you are tuning in. He met his current girlfriend, who he's been with over a year, and a few previous girlfriends on Tinder. It's not all Netflix and chill, although I thought I was going to be catfished once or twice. On another note, it was so much work to find someone not online nowadays, let alone the right one. Who else? Megan says that from the earful that her cousins have given her Tinder as an app for more of quick relations rather than actual relationships. So it's more geared towards casual hookups, which I've heard as well. And Megan says, I feel like dating apps are almost like a game. See how many matches you can get versus actually finding that one person. But websites that you pay for or pay to have, like eHarmony, are more professional and not all set up to be the constant scroll through. Just my opinion. And then I also received a couple anonymous messages. I won't read all of them, but one of them said, hey, Chris, saw your post about online dating. I found it was much easier to find someone I connected with through online dating. I know it's not something most people realize, but I'm an introvert. The thought of meeting someone in real life just didn't seem like it would ever happen. My mom actually suggested I try Plenty of Fish, so we made an account, and I eventually met her boyfriend. The good thing is that if you plan on meeting up with someone, you can always check their social media to check that they are consistent with their dating profile. I'm not saying every date I had with people I met online was magical or perfect, but I found it gave me the chance to learn what I was looking for and looking to avoid much faster than traditional dating ever would. And there are far fewer creeps and weirdos doing online dating than people let on. So thank you so much for Chelsea, and thank you so much for everybody for your comments. Really good insight into the online dating world because, again, I know nothing about it. So let's answer the actual question then, based on what you've said and based on current statistics, things like that. Will Facebook dating be safe? I don't think there's any way to to ever have completely safe online dating, whether you're using Match or eHarmony or Facebook. I don't believe that you can guarantee 100% safety. One thing I will say though, some of these comments kind of alluded to the fact that if you find someone on Facebook, you can creep them, so to speak, and find out a little bit more about who they really are just based on their Facebook profile. And I know some employers do this as well. They creep Facebook profiles. You can tell a lot about somebody simply from the pictures or their basic interests, things like that, that they find on Facebook. Now, in order to determine myself whether or not Facebook dating would be safe, I would relate it to selling something. And for a long time, I've been selling something on Kijiji, and I've bought a lot of things on Kijiji. And for the longest time, until you actually meet up with somebody on Kijiji, everything is completely anonymous. You have a username and an email, but your email address is hidden and everything. And you meet up with this person, and you know what? You could have a similar experience that you would when you're online dating. The person might rip you off, or they might be lying about what they're selling. And, it wasn't really that safe. It was completely anonymous. Over the last couple of years, Facebook has introduced the Facebook Marketplace, which allows you, and this is actually something I just thought of now. This is what I was supposed to mention earlier, as far as things that Facebook has kind of copied because they want a piece of the action. So what Facebook has done with what Kijiji did with classified ads is they've opened it up so that you can sell things right on Facebook. And it's been a great service because you can see who is selling the items around you, and that allows you to creep that person, and you can see if that person looks shady or based on previous history they may have had with somebody. You can make a proper decision whether or not you want to actually do business with this person. So in that regard, I believe Facebook online dating will be a little bit safer because people will be able to maybe find out a little bit more about the person they're about to interact with without just going on a profile that this person has made up, where again over 53% of people lie about their age, their income, or their weight, or their physical appearance. So I think in that regard, it's going to be, pretty safe. But I found on the internet 9 key tips for dating online safely and successfully. And this is from Psychology Today. And I wanted to share those with you because I think they'll help you make a better decision on whether you want to even try online dating if you haven't already. But if you are on online dating, maybe some things you want to incorporate to make your experience a little more safer and possibly a little bit more successful. So tip number 1 says, if you're not familiar with technology or unsure what to write on your profile, ask a younger friend, relative, or coworker to help you. Don't let the lack of familiarity keep you from participating in online dating. Tip number 2, be completely honest in your profile and photo. You don't want to lie about your age, your background, or your personality. Not everyone will take this advice, but you don't want to start a relationship on a lie, and somewhere down the road, others will know that you aren't what you say you are, or you don't look like you do in your photo, because obviously that's going to come up if you eventually meet someone in person. Tip number 3, many online dating sites are tailored to specific interests. These days, there are dating sites for every type of person and interest. For example, Black People Meet appeals to individuals looking for a partner based on racial preference. JDate is a popular place. JDate is a popular place to go for Jewish singles. Others like seniorpeoplemeet.com appeal to people over 50. Browse the internet and ask your friends. There's bound to be an online dating site that's right for you. And coworker Paul suggested that there's even dating websites based on people who dress up as monsters and ghosts and things like that. It sounded really weird, but I mean, it's a common interest among a lot of people, and maybe a way that you can find someone that's just as weird as you, so to speak. Tip number 4, protect your identity and anonymity. You wouldn't give personal information out to a stranger over the telephone, so why would you do it over the internet? It is best to use your first name only during initial conversations and provide more detailed personal information only after you've met in person and gotten to know one another well. So keep that in mind. Number 5, never provide your last name, address, or other personal financial information to a person you have not met, and never under any circumstances give money to someone you don't know well and have not met in person. Tip number 6, take your time getting to know someone online. Studies show that relationships develop faster online. My advice is to wait at least 1 week before you meet face-to-face, and before you meet in person, move the conversation from online to phone. During a phone chat, you'll get a better sense of whether your personalities click. Also, by taking it slow, you are more likely to see inconsistencies in their behavior and actions. And that reminds me of another statistics that I discovered when I was doing research for this, and they said that the average time it takes for an online couple to get married is actually 8 months to 10 months, which is a lot less than if you meet in person, which can actually be several years. So that's another thing about online dating. Tip number 7, when you're ready to meet, arrange to do so in a busy public place like a coffee shop, bookstore, or other retail outlet. Don't have your date pick you up or drive you home. It's a good idea to let someone else know your plans, where you're going, what time, and your date's name. You can even have a friend drop you off and pick you up from this first in-person meeting. Keep your initial meeting short, and if you do like this person, there's always time later for a longer date. So that's great advice as well. Tip number 8, listen to your gut. Online dating is a great way to find people with common interests. However, building a relationship takes time and attention. Look for consistency in behaviors and answers to your questions. Pay attention to early warning signs that someone might not be legitimate or might not be presenting themselves honestly. And finally, tip number 9, don't be talked into any action that is not in your best interest. Think before you act. As with anything you do on the internet, an ounce of prevention is truly worth a pound of cure. So thank you to Psychology Today for those 9 key tips. That article is written by Terry Orbuck, PhD. She is known as the love doctor, I guess, for Psychology Today. So those are some really good tips to remain safe and successful when it comes to online dating. So that's what I wanted to tackle today on my podcast. I usually give a Netflix suggestion from one of you guys, but I forgot to actually check that today. So I'm going to tell you of the show that I just recently finished. It's called Unsolved: The Murders of Tupac and Notorious B.I.G. I'm a huge fan of hip-hop, specifically 90s and early 2000s hip-hop, and I was always fascinated with the story of Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac Shakur and their murders and everything that surrounded that. And this new show called Unsolved, it just finished 2 weeks ago. It was a mini-series. It was 10 episodes long, and it documented the life and death of Tupac Shakur and Notorious B.I.G. and the investigations afterwards. The show takes place over 3 different time periods. It takes place first off with the life of Tupac and Biggie when they were alive. Then another time frame is the first investigation that took place in 1997, and then again the third time frame is the third investigation that took place in 2007, and the different challenges that the investigators had when investigating this murder. And it was a lot deeper than what they anticipated, as you know, in regards to police involvement and corruption in the Los Angeles Police Department. Really good show. Josh Duhamel is the main actor in it. He plays one of the investigators. The 2 guys that play Tupac, the guy who plays Tupac looks incredibly similar to Tupac himself. The guy who plays Notorious B.I.G. Does a very good job as well. But I love crime dramas, and this was certainly a good one. I would highly recommend it. And again, it's called Unsolved: The Murders of Tupac Shakur and Notorious B.I.G. So check that out. Thank you so much to my sponsors this week. I wanted to give another shout out to Culligan Joe, the Culligan man. Still have my Culligan water here. Still drinking it. It's great. But I wanted to give him another shout out for free because their company and Joe were on the front lines of this whole flood thing, and they were giving out free bottled water to those who had suffered and couldn't use their own tap water. I'm actually in that situation now, and thank you for Culligan for being so generous, and the other companies that have come together and donated supplies and water to those people affected as well. That's my episode today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week. I am Frick the Tech Guru. Have a good week, everybody.